Good morning. The scripture reading this morning is from Genesis chapter 9, verses 8 to 17. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth."
Well, not many things in life are certain, but we may agree that if we do the same old thing in the same old way, we're going to get the same old result. Today's reading is about making a new start. It's about what happens at the end of the great flood when the waters subside and Noah and his family step out of the ark. And it's not just about a new start. It's about a different start. This passage is about the changes that God is going to make in the way that God does things. This is the Earth-God relationship version 2.0. We often hear that God does not change, sometimes even that God is immutable, that God cannot change. Well, I don't believe it. Many of these old Bible stories talk about the ways in which God changes. And we're going to talk about those changes during these Sundays of Lent. And not only that, but my own personal understanding of God, is the nature of God, is not only that God has the ability to change, but that God has a desire to change. And we're going to hear more about that in these Sundays of Lent as well. But before we get to the changes that God makes, let's just review the story quickly. In the beginning, God created an idyllic garden and filled it with plants and living creatures. And in this idyllic garden, the animals eat the plants. Only the plants. In Genesis 1, God says to the humans and to everything that has the breath of life, he says, "I have given every green plant for food." So peaceful is this paradise that the animals don't even eat each other. No creature needs to be afraid. Well, as we know, things go downhill pretty quickly from there. And in chapter 6, God has had enough. "I am sorry I made them," God says. Speaking not just of the humans, but of all living creatures. "I'm sorry I made them." But God isn't quite ready to quit. God wants to start over. This is a huge implication of this story. God doesn't give up on us. God starts over. This isn't, "Oh, that's never going to work." This is, "Oh, if I do it a little differently, I can get it to work." You know? Huge difference. God didn't give up on life on earth. Just a fresh start, a new way. And one of the new things is the end of vegetarianism. "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you," says God to Noah. Now that's a change, but it's not a big change. The big change is this: "I establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood." When we hear that, I think it tends to fire up the inner lawyer in each of us, and we all start parsing the fine print. We hear, never destroy the earth again with a flood. And the old spiritual goes, no more water, but fire next time. But I'm told that in the original Hebrew, it doesn't sound like that. The emphasis is on never again. And it doesn't seem like God is trying to save some wiggle room for the possibility of a different kind of disaster later on. No, this is never again. And then comes this remarkable passage about the rainbow. There's two things here, I think, that are both fascinating and crucial to our understanding of this story. And the first is that it's great when we can look up and see the rainbow in the sky and know that the storm will not last. When life is hard, as the old song says, when the storms of life are raging, when it's raining too much in your life, when you start to feel like that old character in the Andy Capp cartoons, you know, who had his own personal little rainstorm that went wherever he went. When it's just raining way too much, it's good to be able to look up and be reminded that this too shall pass. The storm will not last. That's great, but it's not the purpose of the rainbow. According to this passage, God says to Noah, when the bow is in the clouds, I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature. Now, this is very odd. It makes it sound as if God, without the rainbow, that God might just forget to make it stop raining. You know, the way I sometimes forget to turn the sprinkler off in the garden. And I wake up in the morning and I've been watering the garden for 14 hours straight. And all the vegetables out there, you know, they're all pruned up, you know, big puddles everywhere. Is God really going to forget? I should say that when we read this story, you know, it says that God makes it start raining and God makes it stop raining, and I think we have maybe a different understanding of that. I think we, you know about cycles and evaporation and condensation and all of that. We read this story, we don't have to forget. We don't have to pretend that we don't know what we actually do know about weather patterns. But we can learn a lot from these stories if we enter into them on their own terms. You know, I don't have to believe in Middle Earth and orcs and hobbits to enjoy reading and get a lot out of, to learn about duty and sacrifice and friendship from Lord of the Rings. I don't have to believe that there's a Hogwarts to enjoy reading Harry Potter. Anyway, is this story really saying that God is forgetful? That God needs to be reminded to turn the rain off? And the answer is yes. It's exactly what it is saying in this story. In some of these ancient stories, and in many of the Psalms as well, we find that God is treated as one who is forgetful, one who needs to be reminded. And mostly what God needs to be reminded of is to be merciful and compassionate. I think that like many of us, and I include myself in this, that when we get overwhelmed with the busyness of life, we tend to become so focused on the job at hand that we can forget to be nice to Debbie. That we can forget about the people around us. That's what I meant to say. When the bow is in the clouds, says God, I will remember. I got an email this week that says that we don't really get more forgetful as we get older. What's happening really is that as we get older, we have so much information in our heads. We're so smart, and there's so much up there that it takes a while to find it. So that when you're talking with somebody and you've forgotten their name, there's just so many names up there to flip through, to finally get to the right. And finally, you do get to the right one while the conversation is over and they've gone away. God is a little forgetful about these things. The other crucial thing to understand in this story is that the covenant is absolutely unilateral. These are the terms of the covenant. I will not destroy again. I will see the bow. I will remember. It's all on God. Now, most covenants in the Bible and elsewhere are kind of two-sided. Later on, we're going to hear about another biblical covenant that goes, I will be your God and you will be my people. And there's a give and take to that, a balance to that, but not in here. I will not destroy, I will see, I will remember. And don't forget that the bow is intended to be an actual bow, like a bow and arrows bow. You know, when I was a kid, I thought the rainbow was like a bow on a Christmas present, you know? No, it's a weapon, it's a bow. And God is saying, I will unilaterally lay down my arms. I will hang up my bow. This may be unprecedented. I can't think of any other story in any faith tradition in which the all-powerful divine being becomes voluntarily vulnerable, weaponless, in front of humanity without demanding something in return. Ah. Well, except, I suppose, for the Jesus story, which is very like that. Remember, the Apostle Paul writes, Jesus did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness. This is what's different about the new start in the time of Noah. God stands before us without any weapon. God no longer omnipotent, but vulnerable before us, exposed, unprotected, open. The moat is empty, the drawbridge is down, the gate is up, the walls are dismantled. The old way didn't work, says God, so I'm going to try a new way. I'm going to hang up my weapon. I'm going to remove the threat. I'm going to get rid of the or else. I'm going to make myself vulnerable and demand nothing in return and just see what happens. That's the real story of Noah. That's the real story of Jesus. And the rainbow, the symbol of unilateral vulnerability, is the key to the story. And to this very day, you know, if we want to repair a relationship, if we want to make a new start with someone, a friend, a lover, a spouse, the only way to make that happen is to lay down our weapons, to lay down those things that we have used to hurt, and to make ourselves vulnerable before the other with no expectations. I was talking about this yesterday at Presbytery with Kathy Coates and Nabucco Iwai. And Nabucco said that when the relationship is fractured, try refraction. Refraction is what makes the rainbow, is what divides the light into the colors of the rainbow. When the relationship is fractured, try refraction. Being vulnerable. Of course, it's no guarantee of success. I'm not sure that God's vulnerability after the flood really brought humanity any closer to God. But vulnerability is the only thing that has any chance of rebuilding a relationship. The rainbow is the only way to really have a new start. Thanks be to God.